My look back at Great American Bashes from the years past has me stopping at a particularly interesting point, a watershed point in WWE's history, as they are trying to push through and carry on in the midst of a huge tragedy in their midst going on in their watch, as the world now has this bigger eye of scrutiny upon them. Let's talk about the Great American Bash 2007 from July 22nd at the HP Pavilion in San Jose, California. This show was nominated by Colby C over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. And the real notable thing about this show is it is the first pay-per-view they put on after the Chris Benoit double murder-suicide. It was the weekend of Vengeance the month before, Night of Champions, where Chris Benoit was supposed to wrestle CM Punk for the vacant ECW championship. Benoit no-showed the event, and we now know what he did during that time period, and we'll talk more about the implications and how that affected the card on this night going forward. But yeah, that obviously created a huge lasting ripple effect in wrestling. You know, where were you when you found out about the tragedy of what happened with Chris Benoit and his wife Nancy and their son Daniel? It was one of those moments for me as a fan where it was a similar feeling to, you know, when you found out about Owen Hart dying or Eddie Guerrero dying, but it's just so much more, it's darker. It felt more sinister, I guess, in the way, because of the way it went about. First, when you first hear, oh, Chris Benoit and his family are dead, you think, well, something happened that, you know, to all three of them. And I think that was what me and my friends all kind of thought about. And then, yeah, as that evening was going on, I think as on West Coast time, as Raw was starting to air, that by then, more details had come out about, you know, what had happened to Benoit as they were doing the tribute show. I remember when it happened and just being blown away by just the sudden, you know, the shocking nature of it, thinking how supremely messed up it was. Definitely made it difficult to enjoy WWE for a while. Not that I necessarily blamed WWE for what happened. I think that it was just, yeah, it just cast this real dark cloud over watching wrestling in a way that, you know, how I felt after Owen Hart passed or Eddie Guerrero passed, that I didn't feel with them. It was just so much more sinister in this case. And I can remember the media firestorm that was just surrounding this story for weeks and months, and how all these theories about why it could have happened or how, and did steroids play a role, and how culpable is WWE in a case like this. And this is before even we learned about the state of Benoit's brain at the time. And it was just this really big tragedy that I think it's something that WWE still is not quite fully recovered from. And in a way, we are still feeling a lot of the effects of what happened. I think some changes, and obviously it's created a lot of different changes in policy in many ways in wrestling. And I think obviously many of them are for the better. It's crazy to see how WWE bounced back from this, or tried to bounce back, because, you know, obviously the biggest thing creatively that suffered from this, and, you know, and again, I'm not trying to like equate this to the, you know, the human loss and the emotional toll that it took, but for WWE, the biggest thing that it cost them was the Mr. McMahon blows up in a limo storyline and the who done it. And in fact, it was the Raw after Vengeance, where there was supposed to be this big dramatic chapter or big turn or big point in the storyline, and to find out more of who was responsible for Vince's demise and everything. Obviously that gets scrapped because of the Benoit tragedy, and so you can't have that anymore. And so finally this quasi-tasteless storyline was finally dashed. And then when they did that, I think it really exposed just how creatively bereft the rest of this company was. And watching back all this stuff, and again, when I lived it, I was like, wow, wrestling doesn't seem that fun or that interesting. And it's not just, you know, me trying to, you know, come to terms with this incredibly shocking passing of a wrestler who I at one time really enjoyed, and hearing what he did to his family is not just that and getting over that and trying to like press forward and use WWE and use wrestling as like a salve for my mental wounds or whatever. It's just that like the product really sucks around this time. Like, you take away the most interesting storyline on that show and wow, there's like nothing interesting or worthwhile that motivates any of these characters. And I will say this, WWE did a very good job in those first few years just completely whitewashing it and completely omitting his name from the record. And it's not like a CM Punk thing where fans like were chanting Benoit's name or trying to hijack or anything like that. So I think between WWE and the fans, I think we all did a very good job just kind of like unpersoning Benoit. And again, I think the media storm surrounding this is, man, that's something I think that deserves its own kind of retrospective at some point. But I do just remember how difficult it was to be a wrestling fan at this time because of the negative perception that Benoit put on wrestling, you know, for all the justified and the unjustified reasons, I think. So not even taking the Benoit tragedy into account, this company is already dealing with a lot of injuries to their top stars, guys like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Rey Mysterio, and then this happens, and so they're trying to scramble for that. And then in the midst of all that, just when they're trying to right the ship in some way, just before the show, another top star goes down with injury to further complicate things, which we will get into when we get there. But yeah, it's a really rough time for an overall very rough year. Like the Chris Benoit thing, the Chris Benoit tragedy is, sadly, it's kind of the tip of the iceberg for problems that are going to further beset WWE for a while. We get the opening hype package where they say, "You've accepted the invite for a bash. Let the party begin." Oh my God, not even this opening hype package can sell me on John Cena versus Bobby Lashley or convince me that Lashley is anything close to capable on the mic. 13,851 folks in the arena, 229,000 pay-per-view buys. It's up just a little from the previous year. Michael Cole and JBL on the call for SmackDown, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler for Raw, and Joey Styles and Taz for ECW, I guess. Your opening matchup is for the US Championship as MVP takes on Matt Hardy. MVP has been the US Champion since May, but they won't tell you anymore who he beat for it. But he is on the beginning of what's going to be a massive career-defining run for him as the US Champion. And one of his biggest rivals during this period is against Matt Hardy, who recently got a non-title win over him on SmackDown. And Matt also eliminated MVP from the World Title Battle Royal last week. Hardy is being built as kind of being on the cusp of breaking through the glass ceiling. MVP starts out by working the arm. I love this moment of Matt running around and launching MVP out of the ring. That is a classic spot. And there's a great moment on commentary where Michael Cole says, you know, "John, you got to give Matt Hardy some credit. You got to give him the edge for what he's doing here in this match." And JBL just does not take that at all. Goes, "No, I don't." MVP keeps powdering out of the ring. Matt gets on the second turnbuckle for a dive, but MVP yoinks him off and Matt comes crashing down. Montel keeps piling on the pressure, hits that big boot to the dome. Matt biting MVP in the leg to get out of a hold at one point. Hardy starts to fight up after he hits a big clothesline. They make their way to the top rope where MVP hits a superplex. We get a super back suplex attempted by Porter, countered in midair by Hardy. He hits the second rope bulldog, the second rope leg drop, the side effect. None of it's enough to beat the champ. There's more backy forthy, another boot by MVP in the corner, a kind of scary looking bump near the ropes for Matt. MVP hits the playmaker, aka one of the worst moves of all time, and here you can see why, to win and retain. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5, despite, the playmaker being used as the finishing move. I think it was a fine opening matchup. I think these two do have great chemistry. It's very similar to the match they had on SmackDown. I think these two do a really good job kind of holding it down for the mid-card on the Blue brand at this point. And this would be a very long-running feud, in and out of injuries and whatnot, between the two of them. They would eventually become tag team champions in the process of the feud, fighting over the U.S. Championship. But MVP would go on to hold this belt until the following April. Todd Grisham's backstage doing a bit of a wide stance as he introduces Dusty Rhodes to the promo zone. Dusty's excited about being on the show. He invented a lot of Dustyisms in this promo here. I can't do them justice, but he wraps up by telling a story about a bull and he moos.
Whoa, baby!
And up next, it's the Cruiserweight Open for the Cruiserweight Championship. It's a big multi-man matchup, and the first person to score a pinfall or a submission is the champion. Let's break down the competitors. You have Jimmy Wang Yang, Shannon Moore, Funaki, woof woof, it's Jamie Noble, and he's a pitbull now. And the champion, Chavo Guerrero. And hey, there's Finley's Leprechaun. He's not even Hornswoggle yet. He dives in and out of the ring as the bell rings, so keep that in mind for later. Jimmy Wang Yang looks pretty great in his moments to shine. Chavo looks good as well. Jamie Noble Boy goes on a nice little run with Funaki. Chavo with the gory special. Some more awesome agility from Yang. Moore gets launched to the outside. And Cole on commentary has a line where he says, "This is what the Great American Bash is all about." Like, yeah? Like, a small sliver of Great American Bash history, belongs to the Cruiserweights, I guess, between a very, very narrow time period in their history, I guess. One show a year. Yeah, this is what the Great American Bash is all about. Then after a Tower of Doom, suddenly in comes Hornswoggle, who hits a tadpole splash onto Noble, covers him, then wins the title. Yes, by virtue of him being physically in the ring when the bell sounded, that meant that he became a competitor, which I feel sets an unfortunate precedent that you can go back and mess with all sorts of things in wrestling lore. But be that as it may, Hornswoggle is the new Cruiserweight champion. Jamie Noble had to fall on that sword. It wasn't Chavo who put Hornswoggle over yet anyway, but man, there's an absolutely lethal line from JBL on commentary where he says he's the shortest champion since Taz. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. The match itself, I think there was a lot of fun about it. There was like the great Cruiserweight action. Yes, I think that the ones that actually did stuff in the ring put on a really good performance. And then Hornswoggle comes in and boy, it's like, talk about killing the division dead in one move. Like, think of where wrestling fans are, like where their headspace is at in the aftermath still, like a month after the Benoit stuff. Like, man, at this point, I feel like I just want to see some good stuff, man. Something that makes me happy. This does not make me happy. This, it's obviously feels like it's for the kids, I guess, to have Hornswoggle be the Waka Waka comedy relief Cruiserweight champion, because we're going to see between Jamie Noble and Chavo Guerrero, like, man, like Hornswoggle as the Cruiserweight champion is going to be something else. And then he gets picked up in the illegitimate McMahon child storyline, and that title's not really an issue anymore. So this is kind of the way they kill it for a good long while, with Hornswoggle winning it here. So, boy, that's just a real kick in the dick, isn't it? But, again, everything leading up to the finish was fine. We get a Bobby Lashley hype package building us up to the main event here, and then we get a Singapore Kane on a pole match as Sandman takes on Carlito. Not the Sandman, just Sandman. Sandman's actually out wrestling Carlito in the early going. Then you got each man just cutting the other off in the corner over and over again. Carlito goes for a springboard but gets none of it. Sandy finally climbs the pole Jimmy Hart style and grabs the cane. He goes to swing, he misses. Carlito with the backstabber, and that's the end. Holy shit. Man, that was amazing. Half star out of 5, but that was amazing. That his fight for the stick over and over, it's the whole story, the whole fucking time, they're fighting over that stick. Sandman finally gets it, and it fucks him over in the end, and Carlito wins. What a story! We're in the promo zone with Randy Orton. He points out that today is Shawn Michaels' birthday, but Shawn can't remember it because he got punted in the dome by Randy. Man, what a baddie. Up next for the Women's Championship, a rematch from Vengeance when the new champ Candice Michelle defends against Melina. Candice, I think, is a great success story at this point in the history of the women's division in WWE. I think that she's very much like a Trish Stratus, where she was brought in solely for her looks and then put the work in to wrestle and then got really good. I think she was one of the better performers by the time she was done as a competitor. I think that her becoming a champion by this point was a nice little piece of validation. And here Candice is rocking the kind of reflective outfit I feel you earn only after getting 100% completion in a video game. The two ladies start out with a lot of nice backy-forthy. We get some good graps. Melina driving the knees into the abdomen of the corner, and then she starts to work the arm. Candice fights back, hits this nice top rope cross body. Melina with a neck breaker with the split. Candice hits the standing bulldog, which she calls the candy wrapper, to win the match, and she retains the title. I'll give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's a pretty short and sweet matchup, and again, it's not like they're really putting a lot of effort into promoting the women, but it's just that Candice, like I mentioned, she's doing very well given where the women are at this point. And I think that she and Melina worked really well with the limited time they were given here. And yeah, I think it was a good win for Candice. And you'd think that alone is enough to kind of go home happy with. But then, immediately following this matchup, we see the Hardy Boys talking in the back. Jeff's getting ready for his match. Then suddenly in walks in women's champion Candice Michelle, who we literally just saw seconds ago. She's walked in now. And then for the next minute plus, she sexily pours water over herself while this cheap porno music plays. And the Hardys look on with these goofy ass kind of faces oh my God. And then after a minute 15 of this is when Ron Simmons finally walks in, and then he says damn, but it's not in that traditional he doesn't go damn, he doesn't yell it out. No one flinches when he does it. It's this weird swooning kind of damn. It's just really weird.
Damn!
Who was that for? Obviously Vince McMahon. It was for Vince McMahon. But beyond that, why? Why was that? It's not even the fact that they did this that I'm really taking issue with. It's to be expected given who's running the company. But I'm just so confused over the casting for that. or at least the timing of it. If you're gonna have it be Candice Michelle, at least don't insult our intelligence and have it immediately after. You're willing to tell me that in the 10 seconds from when she finishes the match, she runs to the back because she's got to dump water on herself in front of the Hardy Boys, who are presumably just feet away from gorilla position at that point. At least, space it out a little bit. Or, I don't know, have literally any other woman on your roster except your women's champion doing something like that. I don't know, I'm not even mad they did it. It's just a matter of formatting and timing for me. Anyway, in a match for the Intercontinental Championship, Umaga defends against the former champion, Jeff Hardy. Jim Ross describes him, he often described him as the rainbow-haired warrior, and he does the same thing here tonight. Though I think it's kind of ironic because his hair is actually kind of understated on this evening. Anyway, Hardy became the #1 contender after winning this fatal 4-way elimination matchup. Umaga regained the title recently on Raw, beating Santino Marella. It was Santino who, about a month and a half before this pay-per-view, he debuted on an episode of Raw as a plant in the audience when they were in Milan, Italy. And so it was, oh my gosh, this fan from the audience, this native of Italy, beat Umaga with help from Bobby Lashley and became the Intercontinental Champion. It was his big thing. And then Umaga finally beats the plucky, helpless jobber Santino and wins the championship back. That is the last time Santino, I think, would ever be taken seriously. It would ever not be played for like heel goofiness ever again after that point. Umaga is just all strength early on. He just beats up Jeff for the first several minutes uninterrupted. At one point, he's got the trapezius claw locked in on Jeff, and Jim Ross saying, because it reminded him, and so he said, Jerry, you fought a lot of Oriental wrestlers who used that exact same hold. Another great line by Jim in this match is when they bring up the 1985 Great American Bash. He said, I'll bet you a barbecue sandwich that Jeff and Matt watched that event. Hardy tries to slam Umaga, but it fails. Umaga with some big sits off the ropes onto Jeff's sternum. Third time, not the charm. Jeff with another hope spot, but he's picked out of the sky and sidewalk slammed. And Jerry's going, he was slung, if that's a word. Like, see, I'm not the only one who has a problem with this. Jerry and I are in solidarity with the word slung. The diving headbutt is evaded. Jeff fires up with his first actual offense in like 6 minutes. He is on a roll now. He dodges the hip attack, hits the whisper in the wind, which JR calls the twist of fate. He manages to hit the swanton, but Umaga kicks out. Umaga slips out of another twist attempt. He kicks Jeff into the corner, hits the hip attack, the Samoan spike, and gets the win. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. This was actually, for a match that was fairly one-sided in the grand scheme of things, I think it was a really great story. Great sell job by Jeff throughout this, and it really did a wonderful job in pulling the fans in, so when he finally does make his big comeback, like more than anything else in that matchup is when they're just alive and on their feet, and they really woke the crowd up with that, and I think that was really cool comeback moment. The finish I thought was very neat, just very bang bang back and forth, and it's done. Umaga and Jeff do have a good chemistry. They are going to continue their rivalry for the next several months, and I do remember that being a pretty good part of the year 2007 was their matches. We then get a John Cena hype package before we move on to a match for the ECW World title as John Morrison defends against CM Punk. So after the most recent draft, Bobby Lashley was stripped of the ECW title, and so there was going to be a match at Vengeance for the vacant belt between CM Punk and Chris Benoit. For reasons, Benoit did not show up, and so Johnny Nitro, kind of the last minute shocker, was not only put in Benoit's place, but he also won the match and beat Punk to become the new ECW champion. And then a couple of weeks after that, Nitro changed his name to John Morrison, took on more of the, the character we kind of more closely associate with him, even up to this day, as John Morrison came out to this kind of primordial version of This Ain't No Make Believe, and it was a big shift. And I do remember when this happened. It's like, talk about a really unenviable position for John Morrison to be like, okay, like you're filling in for Chris Benoit, and like now we know like why he was gone and you had to fill in. So it's like now you are tasked with being part of the crew that is like trying to, erase the memory and try and get fans to forget about that era. We're not focusing on wrestlers like that anymore. It's all going to be very different. I think I feel a little bit of backlash to that, not unlike say when JBL got pushed and became the WWE champion. It's just like, whoa, we weren't ready for this. And I'm sure, WWE wasn't prepared for this either. And they had to kind of backtrack and like pedal back to fill in the story for him. And not to mention, you are dealing with a fan base who is getting very impatient that CM Punk has not gotten his time in the sun yet. Like, people have been wanting him to be ECW champion since December the previous year. And a lot of people thought that Vengeance was going to be his time. And so, yeah, I think people are just getting impatient. Like, it's not CM Punk, it's not Chris Benoit. This is an unproven commodity, so to speak, in Nitro because he's not done much singles stuff up to that point. So I think everyone is kind of like really in this uphill battle to try and get this particular feud over. Punk gets into a groove after the first minute of the match. Big monkey flip that sends Morrison over-rotating onto his stomach. A monkey flip out of a monkey. Morrison has lost his belt as he cuts Punk off and takes over. They fight their way to the corner. Punk, blocking a superplex, hits a top rope crossbody. Morrison almost wins the match dirty, but the referee catches him. Jomo escapes a bulldog, tries to leave the match entirely, but Punk won't let it happen. He goes for a diving clothesline, but Morrison kicks him on the way down, covers him, and wins. Wow, didn't even have to cheat. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5. The match itself was technically sound, but it just kind of felt to me. And again, I think it's a rough spot for Morrison to be in because like he hasn't done enough to earn like the rancor of fans yet. He's not done enough for fans to actually dislike him or boo him. So right now, I feel a lot of early Morrison, early ECW champion John Morrison is being met with a lot of apathy. And so, they're trying to get this going with he and Punk, and I think they do a good job, an okay job in this matchup. I think their matches for the title will get better, and boy, it's a long road to get there. I feel that like Punk wrestles John Morrison and Chavo Guerrero probably more than any other human being alive for the time being. But I think, it's just a rough spot for everyone to be in, like I said. And, they're making the most of it. And Morrison, I think, obviously is going to improve greatly as a character. In a Tejas Bullrope match, Dusty Rhodes comes out of retirement for one more match as he takes on the legend killer Randy Orton. A few weeks ago on Raw, the Hall of Famer Dusty was walking around the backstage area, introducing his son Cody to the locker room. Then Randy Orton came in and slapped Dusty in the face. They had a confrontation in the ring. 1 week later, Orton challenged him to a match. Dusty ups the ante and makes it his kind of match, a Texas Bullrope match. And in the build, we also do see the official in-ring debut of Cody Rhodes. His first TV match is against Randy Orton. He does a pretty good job. And if you want to hear more about the story of young Cody in WWE, his first run that is, I did a whole video about it and you can check it out right here. A nice ovation for the Dream. You kind of wish this was somewhere closer to his home base of Florida. Now that reaction would have been something else. JR on commentary brings up Dusty being in the first Great American Bash against Tully Blanchard in the steel cage, and that his last match of this pay-per-view was 20 years ago. A lot of stalling before Orton's officially connected to the bull rope and the bell rings. After a little bit of fighting, Orton's the first to grab the cowbell, but Dusty outmaneuvers him and starts dropping those bionic elbows. Even flips him over by the crotch. They fight on the outside as Orton continues to sell like the Dickens. Back in the ring, Orton dinks Dream in the knee with the cowbell, starts to take over, gets him in that old chin lock. Dusty wiggles his arms, which apparently just causes him to rise back up to his feet, giving him the opening to fight back. He hits the flip, flop, and fly, but he misses the elbow drop. Orton with one more dink with the cowbell. Dusty crumbles and Orton pins to win. After the bell, Orton looks to go for the punt, but then a young Cody Rhodes goes, "Whoa, I'm not going to let that happen." I'm going to give it 1 star out of 5. This was Dusty's final match, and I think it was really cool for it to take place at one of the shows that he created. I will give Orton a lot of credit at how he sold for this one. There aren't a lot of people, I think, on the roster who had his background and his ability to be able to do a lot with a little. Like to be able to work with somebody like Dusty, who at this point was very limited to what he could do. And so, they were able to work around that and tell a pretty convincing story. It wasn't much at the end of the day, but the crowd was still into it and they made it look good. So I guess you can't ask for more than that. And I think that, Orton was a great final opponent for Dusty, absolutely. And, the funny thing is, the next night on Raw would be when Orton punts Dusty in the head, and then Cody would respond by eventually joining him as part of Legacy. For the World Heavyweight Championship, the Great Khali defense against Kane and Batista. Oh my God, what a journey we have gone on to get here. So let's back up a couple of weeks. So it was originally planned that Batista and the Great Khali were going to fight one-on-one at the pay-per-view. That sounds like it would have been dog shit. Anyway, Edge was going to be, he was the champion at the time, and he was going to defend against Kane, which, okay, I like them both, but again, showing you just kind of how shallow their creative depth was at this point, where in this post-Benoit thing, we're gonna try and get people excited, get people forget, and let's bring Kane out again and have him challenge Edge, because that really goes well. And then, sure enough, a couple weeks before SmackDown, Edge is hosting a Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans. And before you get the time to ask, hey, why are they celebrating this now in June when Mardi Gras is in March? In that segment, Kane pops out from his disguise and he sneak attacks Edge. And in doing so, Edge gets injured, he tears his pectoral muscle, and he's going to be out for months. So he has to relinquish the championship. I'm suddenly now reminded as I'm retelling this, like, wow, if you put Kane in a meaningless world title feud with somebody, that champion could get hurt. It happened to Seth Rollins. So anyway, at the SmackDown where Edge relinquished the title, they had this 20-man battle royal to crown a new champion, and the Great Khali won. And as the two runners-up, Kane and Batista fought to see who would face Khali at the Great American Bash for the title, but Khali interfered, and so it turned into a triple threat match. The Great Khali cannot stop holding the belt upside down, and how come they can't keep their nameplate fonts consistent? Khali, aka T-Rex as JBL calls him, is not fazed by either man. He knocks them both down fairly easily, even as a big heel kick to Batista. A long nerve hold to bats, one for Kane. He chokeslams them both, he goes bois. They fight to the outside. Batista and Kane briefly work together to send Khali through the ECW announce table before they go at it one-on-one for a bit. Kane hits the big clothesline. Khali somehow re-enters the match. Kane manages to chokeslam him. Batista ducks a brain chop and hits a damn spine buster. Kane with a choke slam, but Batista kicks out. A frustrated Kane brings in a chair, but he walks for miles inside that spine buster of danger. Batista hits his bomb on Kane, but Khali yoinks Batista out of the ring. He throws him into the steps, the double choke slam to Kane, the pin and the win for the Great Khaki. I'm going to give it 1.5 stars out of 5. Well, this has to be the most I've seen the Great Khali bump in a single match, but that alone is not enough to save this thing, because this is still a pretty ugly affair. You know, a lot of ugly, scary-looking bumps in this one. I guess it's the best possible option here, because hey, the world title's got to be defended. He's got to defend it against somebody. I'm not sure I wanted to see, Batista and Khali in a straight-up one-on-one match. We would get that at SummerSlam, so that's fun. But it's, I don't think the world was not ready for it there at that point in July, I don't think. They air a promo that's hyping up Triple H's return from injury at SummerSlam. Quick, let's bring out the guy he's going to lose to then. It's King Booker. He says that no one will be calling themselves a king around here besides himself. He turns his attention to another king in Jerome Lawler, accusing him of regicide, which is hilarious. He wants him to come to the ring and lay his crown down at Booker's feet. Jerome does some thinking, then gets up and tells Booker if he wants the crown to come over and take it. Booker accuses him of treason and he leaves. Oh, well, that was fun. Gets punked out by the commentator on this night. I can't wait to see how he's going to react to wrestling Triple H at SummerSlam and how he's going to do there. In your main event for the WWE Championship, John Cena defends against Bobby Lashley. It's a title match about nothing. So Lashley was the ECW champion through WrestleMania season. He was the champion when he was in the Battle of the Billionaires match against Umaga. He feuded over it with Mr. McMahon for a couple of months. He lost it to him, won it back, and then got drafted to Raw, where he was made to drop and relinquish the ECW championship as a result of the draft. So now Lashley comes into Raw with a chip on his shoulder. He's the uncrowned champion. He's a belt he never lost. So then on Raw, there's a bunch of beat the clock matches to see who will fight John Cena next. And you actually see Lashley beating future stablemate Shelton Benjamin to become the new #1 contender. And the whole build to this at this point is two exciting athletes, two big, strong, young guys having a match. And, I don't know. It just felt like, so what, Because people aren't in love with John Cena at this point. And I think a lot of people feel that Bobby Lashley is being pushed down folks' throats, not unlike a John Cena at this point, where it's like they can clearly see what they want out of this guy. They want him to be another Brock Lesnar. They want him to be another like Batista or a John Cena or whatever. And I think people could see this coming from a mile away, especially with how he was booked in ECW. And so I did find it kind of surprising they would throw him to John Cena this early into the experiment as well. I think that it felt like it was an inevitability, but I think that Lashley probably needed more time, a little more seasoning, because he was still like, Lashley's not known for being a talker in 2025. So imagine what he was like in 2007 when he was just starting out. Like, he was even worse. Now, granted, still in amazing shape. Looks like he hasn't aged a day since then. But man, like, his promo stuff was bad around then. So you've got two guys who a lot of fans feel are kind of put upon them. Two guys who a lot of these fans feel each have some character deficiencies. A lot of people don't like John Cena, and Bobby Lashley is unproven. And they don't give you much confidence about it here. You got all these like video packages of the talking heads from all these different former champions giving their insight about it, but it's all just so it's like, it just feels like they don't believe themselves when they say it. Like, Steve Austin is reading these lines like he's got a gun pointed at him from just off camera, saying, I think John Cena and Bobby Lashley will be a dream match for all the fans of WWE because they bring so much to the table. Like, you don't mean this, Austin. Come on, it's not a dream match. It's fine. It's going to be a fine match, I'm sure. I just, like, in this current landscape, this was not what I wanted. I wasn't feeling Lashley. I was kind of cooled off on Cena. So this was not doing it for me. And then what made it worse, in the go-home face-to-face, Lashley's whole thing was, I'm not here to talk about the match. So he leaves. Then Cena does a better job putting Bobby over than Lashley himself in this promo. So again, watching this back, like, maybe there was a small glimmer of hope you might have had watching this, that, oh, maybe they are going to pull the trigger and they're going to do something crazy and give Lashley the title, But then when you watch that promo back, that's not happening. If that's how they work around Lashley's inability to talk, just having John Cena doing it for him. Also, Lashley gets a new version of his theme on this night. It's in a new key, now with lyrics and a chorus. And yeah, he's still stealing Brock Lesnar's ring entrance right on down to the pyro. Man, they just had no shame at this point. Interesting reactions for both men here when they do the ring intros, because neither man is being like booed a ton, but they are being booed a little bit. Like, that's the important thing. Neither man has been really chosen by the fans to be like their guy. So you have two people who, like, the fan base isn't really 100% sold on either of them. And this is your main event. Starts off with a big lockup into the test of strength. Lashley starts to show some amateur skills, multiple takedowns of the champion. Cena tries to lock in the STFU early, which gets some boos from the fans. Lashley at some point gets busted open. He suddenly catches Cena, hits a nice suplex. Some more slams on the champ. Cena fights back, hits that top rope leg drop to the back of Bobby's head. Lashley with a nice lift and a drop gut first onto his shoulder, then into a rear naked choke. Cena hits not one, but two proto slams, does that you can't see me fist drop, but Lashley comes back with a big power slam. There's more back and forth. Cena hits the FU, but he takes too long to make the cover, and Bobby kicks out. The crowd very vocal at this point in the match, but their opinions on both men seem to change with the wind. I don't think you could tell at any one point in the matchup like who the fans were really rooting for, because like I said, everyone got cheered a little bit, everyone got booed a little bit, and it just came in different degrees. Cena was getting like, if you had like two charts simultaneously measuring like the cheer to boo ratio, you could see the boos just doing this the whole match. It's crazy. Lashley rears back for a spear, but Cena trips him up and locks in the STFU. How can you put this move on a guy with no neck? Lashley finally grabs the ropes. Cena gets frustrated but walks right into a spear. We get a cover. Cena kicks out. They make their way to the corner. Lashley's on Cena's shoulders. Cena just drops him. They call it an FU from the top. Fine, I guess. Cena with the cover and the win to retain, and then we get sportsmanship before we go off the air. I give it 4 stars out of 5. That really badly executed final move aside, I think it was a really, really strong matchup, and it greatly exceeded my expectations going into it. I think the one thing that could have made the match better was have Lashley be a heel. There was a moment after they signed the contract where Lashley like spears John Cena, and like, wow, you actually see him do something impressive. And then like they don't build on that at all. And it's still like face versus face or whatever. And I'm like, this is all wrong. If you're not going to turn Cena, then yeah, turn Lashley here. Like, what's the loss? Okay, you've been building him as a face for a while, but he's still young enough in his career where if you truly believe in the long-term investment, you can make him a bad guy, especially going against Cena, to help kind of like, I don't know, at the very least try and get fans to cheer Cena. And I think Lashley could have been in a fine spot as a heel. Like that spark he had where he speared him in the contract signing, like, yes, more of that, please. Like, give us some conflict. Give us a reason for these two to fight other than I'm big and I'm a competitor and I want that championship. Like, that's not going to fly in 2007. We didn't want that. And so I think that this match really suffered from the build being a bit too nicey-nicey. I think that the match and partly the build suffered because there was, two baby faces. I think Lashley could have afforded to be a heel here. And it's crazy to think that we wouldn't see Lashley get this close to the main event scene again in WWE for 13 years. Because not too long after this show, Great American Bash, he'd be written off like later in the month for like injuries and to be treated for injuries and stuff. And then he just didn't come back to TV. And his contract, he'd be released in February of 2008. And then would go on to have a lot more success in, TNA. And obviously he went back to WWE to become a champion there. And now he's in AEW, still getting work, still doing well for himself. Then, of course, his MMA run along with that. So, but it's crazy that, this was the time they were testing the waters seemingly with Lashley, and they wouldn't get a chance to really try that again for well over a decade. It's kind of crazy. That said, my grade for the 2007 Great American Bash is a C-. Even if the Chris Benoit murder-suicide never happened, everything else being the same, it's still a really boring product. And like I said at the top of this review, when they had to scrap the Who Killed Mr. McMahon storyline, I think that really exposed it. And I think this show here is a great example of that. There are some good things in this show. I think each of the Hardy brothers do good in their singles matches. Bobby Lashley and John Cena showed moments of brilliance. And I think that even though the Texas Bullrope match was very limited, they still made it look like a decent fight and everything. But there's still some other just big head scratchers and just not great moments across this show. And again, it's not like, oh, I feel bad watching this because like the memory of Benoit is still so fresh in my mind. Because even now I'm watching it now, all these years later, it's like, this is just not a great product. And some of the stuff they did here on this show in particular was due to things beyond their control. But there were a lot of things that were within their control, and they still made the wrong choices. But what did you think of the Great American Bash? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Hit that bell icon for all the notifications. We are leaving the Great American Bash landscape for the time being here in classic pay-per-view review land. And since it is going to be the month of August next time here, we want to, things are getting hot, things are getting sticky and nasty and gritty. A little smoky in the air, a little bit of that, those exhaust fumes. I'm thinking Sturgis. I'm thinking Road Wild 1999. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.